Hey, I'm Faith Prince, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Anne and Damien.
Folks, hello, and welcome back to another episode of You Might Know Her From
with Anne and Damien.
I'm Damien.
I'm Anne. This is our podcast, if you're not familiar with it, where we shoot the shit with each other, talk the comings and goings of pop culture, our aging bodies, and of course, we interview a character actress each and every episode.
And I have some things to tell you, and there, of course, Anne and I have this new bit now. It's not like a new bit, it's an old bit, which is ironic because the whole bit is about old bits. But we have now started a laundry list of things that we always talk about. And I guess it's different. There's one tier that is like topics we always discuss. Things like the L word, Sex and the City, like Come and Just Like That, Tyne Daly. These are, like Tyne Daly in Gypsy. Like these are things evergreen topics that it's not like we're not always covering the same territory in said topic. Then there are like things where we are legitimately having the same conversation as if it's the first time ever. So it's like, and you look like this cat from Heathcliff. Which one? We go back and forth. Neither of us ever remember the cat's name as of this moment of recording. I don't remember it.
Still don't.
But we we did a poll on Instagram to see if you guys agreed that we look like these characters from Heathcliff. I don't remember what either of their names are, but I think we look like them, and I'm sure we'll have the conversation in another 9 months. Other topics, and what else besides Heathcliff?
Other things that we've done repeatedly is try to name all the track listings of Spice and Spice World in order without cheating. We've done that at least twice in our friendship in like 12 years, and I forgot that we had done it. Then I found the notebook paper where we had done it like 10 years ago, and I was like, we did pretty well.
One time we did it, I remember we were in Long Island City. I had gotten iced coffee with chicory root in it, and I got sunburnt. But because I was so resistant to leaving until we did it, Another one is we are always like, oh my God, like who's in Mannequin?
2.
Oh, Kim Cattrall and Andrew McCarthy, but it's different in Mannequin 2. Oh, right, Christy Swanson. Who's the guy? Jonathan Silverman. Is it Jonathan Silverman? I think it's Jonathan Silverman. I think it's someone else. Have we had this conversation before? Oh, it's some guy. We don't know his name again. And then we look it up and we're always like, of course, it's the guy who's in, what's that show called? Murray's Head? What is it called?
Oh, Herman's Head.
Herman's Head. Maybe his name is Murray something. I don't know. Anyway, point is, these are conversations we are constantly regurgitating, and like we really do have them. It's like it seems like we're using the Meisner technique because we're really tapping in to the same conversation with the exact same emotions we had back then. So I love that about us. And so where I'm going with this, hello and welcome. Where I'm going with this is I have some things to say about Sex and the City, at least the actors from Sex and the City. Okay, so
oh my God, okay.
Part one is my great friend, Anne Pomeroy. Hi, Anne, if you're listening. She sent me Cynthia Nixon's kitchen tour and said, I need your opinion on her kitchen. And it's like Cynthia Nixon's like, it's not Hudson Valley, but it's like her home, like upstate. And it's like, it's like a big kitchen with like, and she's like, here's my colander. Here's my like bag where I put all the things from the garden. And then she like indicates to the, above the cabinets. I don't know, whatever that's, it's like some people consider that storage space and some people don't. And I feel like she is using it for storage space and it's filled with tons of vases. And I said to Anne, the other Anne, I said, I honestly think I'm into her kitchen. It looks regular. And Anne was like, that's so much stuff. And I said, I think I like it. It's not like super manicured or like it looks like a country house.
Yeah.
And I liked that about it because I feel like that's like something like as a young person growing up in my household, like I do not possess the skill of like interior design or like the care for it. And I didn't grow up in a house where that. And it was like we had a lot of stuff that we had 6 children, 2 parents, and a dog. And it was like there was just lots of stuff because there were lots of people. And so I sometimes find like the idea that like the home is like so stylized overwhelming. And I was kind of very charmed that she had like a basket for like getting her like veggies from the garden and like 35 different vases that didn't match on top of her cabinets. And Anne was just like, too much stuff. And I was like, you know what? I think not that I wasn't on Cynthia Nixon's side, but like she has good politics. But, like, and just like that makes it all tricky, Tell me what you think.
I agree. I mean, I think that I was wondering if it was like an Architectural Digest tour or if it was like, you know, what are the Vogue 72
It's like
questions
on
or
her
whatever it is.
Instagram and it's not a collaboration. Because like I was like,
love it.
is she just like making content? And like this is the other thing. It's all depressing because it's like, why is Cynthia Nixon, Tony Emmy winning actress who I think is like a pretty excellent actor. Like why is she making
Yes.
content about her kitchen? But again, I was charmed by it.
You're so right, actually. It probably is that the AJLT team was like, okay, the show's premiering on May 29th.
Well, and she's an EP on it, so she has like a vested interest in it being a success.
They were like, you need to like make sure your grid is filled up with like content, recent content, so it looks like you've been here before, you know, which obviously she is very online, but like maybe her team was like, oh, it would be charming if you put your like regular kitchen online. I'm charmed by it. Yeah, I always feel very uncomfortable when I go into people's houses where I'm like, do you sit on the couch? Is this a livable space? Do you hang out here? It makes me uncomfortable. I also didn't grow up in a house like that. And so, yeah, multiple vases. I'm just intrigued that she didn't like take them down for the photos. You know what I mean? That she was like, this is me. This is who I am. I'm going to leave them up. I'm not going to lie and say like, if I knew a person was coming into my house to photograph it, I'd like make sure it looked better than it does at this very moment.
We're gonna link out to her Instagram post, but I want to know, and we'll do a poll maybe when this goes live of. Sorry, and you might have to come out of Instagram because at the time of this recording, I'm getting ready to go to Italy, so you might have to post the poll if I'm on.
I might have to handle
I'm on
it, okay.
Italia time, but yeah, we need to know like what you think, like because I think that we probably have a collection of both. We have like eclectic queers that are elder millennials like us that are both I think
Yeah.
queer on
like have their doll collection on display.
yeah, like they're like
figurines.
us, you know, like it's like
Kitsch.
Anne won't get rid of her DVDs. I have books I've never read. I will still keep them. And then I think we have queers that are like more like, you know, minimalist or like, you know, hyper stylized, which it's not a negative. It's just like it's not the way I was raised and it's not a skill I developed later in life.
I'm trying to remove my attachment to like physical things. It's not really my strong suit, but yes, I do. I think DVDs, I think physical media is important. I diatribe on it about
I think
that on
that
this
you have been
podcast
proven
all the
right
time.
in the journey of like all of these streamers getting bought out by other places and then certain titles just being taken down. And it's like, I can't find this, you know?
And even when you buy something on, I'm just going to last statement here. Even if you buy something on Apple or on Amazon, if the contract with the studio changes, you no longer own it. It's not like you own it in perpetuity. You own it as long as Amazon has a contract with MGM that they have that movie available for you. So anyway, I am working on my relationship with physical things because I don't like living amongst too much stuff. But yeah, let us know what you think about Cynthia Nixon. I am a fan of hers, and I was thinking back to how former guest of the show, Miriam Shore from last month, said that she is good friends with Cynthia's wife, Christine. And I was charmed by that they're like kids go to the same school and they're like New Yorkers of a certain ilk. And it made me happy.
Yeah, I love that. I love Miriam. I forgot she played one of Cynthia's like people that she was dating on and just like that. The other thing about it, just like that I think is worth mentioning is that I also reunited with my friend Monica, who was so great to see her. And it kind of reminded me of when you and I mean, it's for sure old school, like us in our late 20s, early 30s vibes, but also one of those things where she was like, this book. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know it. I'm writing it down. And then I was like, this thing. And she was like, oh, I don't know that. I'm going to write it down. And it was like fun leaving with a little like pop culture list of things to look up.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she mentioned is, do you remember Tom and Lorenzo? They were like gay bloggers from the like early aughts, tens, and they covered it was like Toller Road. There was another one that was like Boy Square or something like that.
No,
and
I don't remember them specifically.
Well,
Okay,
they like
tell me.
covered Drag Race before anyone else covered it, and it was just like, and it was like during season 2 of Drag Race. Anyway, so they still operate, and they have a podcast, and they wrote a book about Drag Race. Like they're still in business, which made me happy. And she was saying that they post things still on Instagram where they like call out people's silly outfits or whatever. And she said that they posted about Sarah Jessica Parker's like outfit at her shoe store opening in like Soho, and it wasn't like criticizing her body or like her looks. It was just sort of like talking about like the appropriateness of her outfit for this particular event. Sorry to say that her bookstore, her shoe store is closed, I think now, but it was like, this was like during COVID. I think it was like 2020 or 2021. Anyway, so they posted about it. And then she DM'd the account and said that they misunderstood her and what she was doing and if she could talk to them. And so then they like had a phone conversation with her where she talked to them about like what she was going for with the look and how they like, and again, they were not like criticized. It wasn't like Perez Hilton where they were like putting a dick on her head and they were like, what, how like old and haggard she looks or something. They were just like commenting on like sort of the look and its relation to her shoe store opening. Anyway, so she DMs them, asks them if they can talk. They say like, okay. They have a phone conversation with her where she defends her look, I suppose. And then their takeaway from the conversation is like, can we talk about this phone call on our podcast this week? And she says yes. And so then they do. And so, and we're going to link out to that as well. But it really was like, I was like, I'm like both horrified that she DM'd them because it's like, you're a public figure. You're opening a bookstore, which like, let's circle back to the idea that like everyone needs to make content and be a like entrepreneur nowadays. Mogul. You can't just like be an actor. So I was like kind of grossed out by it, but also kind of charmed by the fact that she like was like, can I talk to you? It wasn't like she was like, but I was like, you know, like I feel like the kind of celebrity that I don't know, like or think is doing it the right way is like commenting on the post and it's like, oh my God, you guys misunderstood the look. And it's like, you know, a little comment on the post to be kind of like wink, wink, opposed to being like, can I talk to you to defend my like fashion? And then
it's so intimate.
Yeah. And then anyway, but she didn't ask them to take it down or make them take it down, which I appreciated. And she didn't have her like team contact them, which I also appreciated. But I was just like,
Yeah, I'm kind of into that, honestly. And the fact that she said, like, yeah, you can talk about the phone call on the podcast. She's tricky for me. You know, I'll forever love her because she's Broadway's fourth Annie. Is that right? Third Annie? Fourth Annie? I should know. Anyway, she is tough for me. But I have to say, I'm excited to listen to that podcast. And I'm kind of charmed by it.
And we're
not because it is micromanaging and very, like, executive producer of her. But yeah,
something is charming about it. I totally understand. And we love, as mentioned at the beginning of this, we love Sex and the City. We love And Just Like That. Even though we think And Just Like That is sort of an abomination, we love the characters so much that we are still with it. And if you're new to the podcast because you just found us or because you love Faith Prince and you clicked in on this episode, we will be recapping every episode of And Just Like That come premiere. So stay tuned, stay locked in because we are going to be covering it, and we have, we've talked about it for 10 minutes now. We've talked about the actresses from And Just Like That. Like, we'll be doing this on the Patreon weekly, so support and subscribe to the You Might Know Her from Patreon. It's the best way to support this podcast that we do independently. Still, 5 years later? So, like, good on us. We haven't sold out yet, but we want to because we need to make a check. But yeah, support the Patreon, and if you can't do that because, listen, Jesus Christ, times are tough, you can leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast right now, whether that's Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. It is really helpful to an independent podcast like ours, so thank you so much.
Now, Damien, let's get into this month's episode with none other than Tony winner Faith Prince. We were so fucking hyped by this conversation that I have to say we just let this baby roll right out because I think we just got 1,000 tidbits of wisdom from somebody that is just so smart, so keen, so funny, a vaudevillian at heart, which you know is like the way to earn Damien and I's love. I was excited to talk to Faith Prince, but I feel like I came out of it an even bigger fan of her work based on knowing like how she approaches everything. She's like a clinician, but also she's like a broad, and I feel like that's a perfect combination for both of us.
You might know her from My Father the Hero,
The Last Dragon,
Modern Family,
Emily in Paris,
Melissa and Joey,
and Broadway productions of Guys and Dolls,
A Catered Affair,
Bells Are Ringing,
and Boop. Big day here because we are here with Tony Award winner, actor, singer, musical theater legend, Faith Prince. Faith, thank you for being here on the show.
Thank you. I'm so curious about your title of your podcast.
Say more.
I can't wait to hear about that.
Well, we're so thrilled to have you on it, and we know you for so many things, but currently you're starring in Boop on Broadway.
That's what I hear. 8 shows a week.
Yes, you're still doing 8 shows a week, which I love because I feel like it is becoming a thing of the past in a lot of ways, and so I love that you are doing 8 shows a week. Thank you so much for keeping it alive.
Oh, I love it. Are you kidding? It's a thrill.
So for our listeners, you're playing Grampy's love interest, Valentina. we just saw it this weekend. You bring a ton of hilarious bits to this performance. We had a blast. At what stage of the creative process did you join Boop? And like, as an actor known for carrying the emotional weight of shows like Guys and Dolls, Bells Are Ringing, A Catered Affair, which we're going to get to soon, like, is it fun to show up at the end of Act 1 and like in this big old school, like glossy, dancey, silly musical?
Oh yeah, I sort of equate it to being like an athlete, and you've been running marathons your whole life, and somebody says, "Hey, we're doing this thing. Would you like to sprint a couple of times throughout the night?" You know,
Yeah.
and it takes a bit of getting used to, and it's a different kind of headset. But you know, when you reach a certain age, you appreciate it. You know, because I'm not carrying the show, really. Jasmine is. I mean, that's her job now, right? Really. I mean, we all support her, but she's really the main, and she does it fabulously. But I look at her and I go, I know what that feels like. I know the responsibility of that. And you know, she's up for the challenge, and she's a young girl, but she's got the headset for it and the talent, and it's been a joy to watch that. But I'm in the supporting, and you know, I add what I can and my little splash of spice. And developing it was challenging and interesting. You know, I thought there'd be a little more meat, but as my director friend Walter Bobby says, there's no fat.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, Leah, like you're a crafts person. You know, like you're a true actor. We've listened, to, you know, to and read interviews where, you know, like you're just always talking about finding the truth in your scene work. So like, how do you approach that work when playing
How did you know that about me? You've done your research.
But like, how do you, does that approach change when you're playing Valentina and it's like a 1930s cartoon world meets 2025 New York mashup?
No, it just the setting changes. The craft never changes. And that's why it's been challenging and wonderful, because, you know, I wanted to make it the most it could be. I always, in my own work, I talk in terms of arc. I talk in terms of relationship. The stakes are the most important thing in musical theater. And it doesn't matter if it's a sci-fi world, if it's a cartoon world, if it's on the prairies, if it's the Oregon Trail, it doesn't matter. You still have to look at those zigs and zags and concepts to have a fully blown, wonderful character. And it's tricky with Valentina because, I mean, could Betty Boop and Grampy survive without her? Maybe. But she's also the one that gets them back to where they were. I mean, she's a smart cookie.
Yeah.
And I really related to that because my dad's a nuclear engineer. So I understood that world. And he also was a vaudevillian. So I went, perfect, I'm in. I know who Valentina is. And they really gave me a hot second to just figure it out because they flew me in. I was one of the last pieces of the puzzle. You know, they gave me the script the night before and I just had to make some hard and bold choices. And pretty much I've built on that, you know. I think she's gutsy, she's fun, she's a vaudevillian. I think that's how she connects to Grampy in the cartoon world. She understands his flavor. And so Greg and I worked together, Greg Barnes, who did the costumes. And I said, let's, you know, from Chicago, we learned some things. And I said, let's make the collars a little bigger. She's almost like just a touch of cartoon in her natural real world.
I love that.
So we just developed that. And I wanted sort of characteristically like, you know, glasses that you recognize who she is. She has a cartoon feel to her. And I was, you know, I kid Stephen DeRosa, who's my partner in crime, plays Grampy. It's wonderful. We get on so well. I said, we're Natasha and Boris. And of course, the kids didn't know who that was. You know, Rocky Bullwinkle.
Yeah.
But that's why I imagine at the top of Act 2, when we're doing Where's Betty, we look like Natasha and Boris.
Oh my God. You had us cackling because like you have this thing where you're like your sense of urgency as Valentina in that number was really funny. And I know you're not playing it for laughs, but you got us.
Right. Well, and I was directed that way. I mean, Rochelle Rack, who's the associate choreographer, and Jerry Mitchell kept saying, you know, in the real world, we're excited about getting to see Betty, as opposed to, oh, where's Betty? in the black and white world. So I just honestly took the direction.
I love you.
Can I ask you, talk about like sort of a different sort of discipline that this requires? What do you do backstage when you are waiting and you have to like wait to come in and do your number? Do you have like a ritual? Do you have like rules for yourself of
Always.
Yeah.
I'm there 2 numbers before.
Okay.
Because I learned that from Jerome Robbins, because you've got to get a feel of the audience. And I always ask everybody, how's the audience tonight? Because that's what I'm looking for. I love doing the same thing every night so I can be free.
Yeah.
To really tune in, look at the audience. I mean, Jasmine's mother said to me the other night, I like the way you connect with the audience. If you really like just bold face, go there.
Yeah.
And I went, yeah, that's how I was taught. And so my ritual is to no stress, enjoy it. It's almost like I come downstairs, my dresser helps me get ready. I'm there 2 numbers before I go on, so I get the flavor of it. I just sit back. The kids come by and do a little show for me. Some night I'm going to take my little camera and do all the things they do for me. They dance for me. They kiss me. They hug me. They say hello. We exchange things of the day. I talk to the stagehands. I talk to the other dressers. My dresser and I have a constant conversation. I love the ritual of it. I mean, that's why I do it.
Yeah. We were wondering, because you do a lot of like character work, like you've done a lot of character vocal work on stage, particularly like as Miss Adelaide. Did you talk to Jasmine at all, because she's like grounded in this Betty Boop voice for this 2.5-hour musical? Did you talk about like how to protect and care for your voice during the run? Because it seems like on top of all the singing that's demanded of her, there's a lot of like, she's put her voice in a new place.
You know, honey, we haven't talked a lot, but she knows I'm there.
Yeah.
And it's tricky because I coach and direct and, all of that. And I'm real careful about that line. Totally. Because that's not my role here,
Yeah.
And there are times, I'll see somebody and I'll think, oh, more diction or, this, and it's just not my job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And plus she didn't need any help. I mean, she got there on her own. Yeah. But I'm with you. The sneezing in Guys and Dolls and the sort of pops and the voices, were sometimes more hard than the singing.
Mm. Did you have to like develop a standard way of doing it?
Just support it.
Yeah.
You got to support it, but her technique is really, real strong. So I'm guessing that's what she does, is she supports her speaking voice as well as her singing voice, because that's the only way you can do it. Mm-hmm. But some people don't know they need to do that, right. And you kind of learn when you have to do it.
Yeah. So like, as we mentioned, Faith, you played Miss Adelaide in the 1992 revival of Guys and Dolls, which was a star-making turn for you. You earned you a Tony Award. And as young theater nerds, we grew up with your performance from Broadway's Leading Lady concert, which was like just absolutely iconic and formative for us. Adelaide feels woven into your legacy, like Carol Channing to Dolly, or like Barbara Streisand to Fanny Bryce. Like, how do you feel about Adelaide, like some 30 years removed from her? Like, are you cool with being
totally.
Yeah.
I think you learn to, again, I think age, I mean, I've been in this business 45 years. I think you learn to appreciate it. And, you'll hear iconically like TV legends like Carol Burnett or, TV performers that are known for a certain personality and, or character. And at first you're like, I always think of Bob Saget. He wanted to show the world he was, a little lewd and rude, and because he had such a shiny sort of, innocent kind of personality, and he really came on hard with that in his stand-up. I never went through that, but I got tired of singing the lament a lot, and it was like, oh my God, I've done so many more things than the lament, that, especially when I would go to do concerts, it's iconically people would want to see it. But my first act, Daisy Prince was the director, and Stuart Ross, who had done Forever Plaid, and Alex Ryback was my pianist. So we came up with a lounge version of Adelaide, and that was really fun because the savvy people, got what they needed, but then I got to do it in a different way. So I'm always trying to find ways of weaving things in. And even the show, it's about sneezing and being in love and all of that. And they had a line, Bob had a line, but it was too on the nose. And I said, what if I sneeze at the end? Like, because he's gonna chew, she's gonna chew. And I go, now I'm with him, and he goes LMFAO, whatever he says at the end, and I go, achoo, like I've got to live with that now.
Yeah.
To me, that was funny.
Yeah.
But you know what? My pitch didn't go. So, we carry on. We carry on, my dear.
You talked a little bit about how the fame and celebrity that came with that production made you a little bit uncomfortable. You were thrust forward as sort of the fresh star of the show. How did you cope with it at the time? Because it's a lot of pressure.
Well, it was a lot of pressure because Nathan and Adelaide, iconically, are the soubrettes. They're not the leads.
Yeah, I thought about this just this morning because I was like, oh, like I did it in middle school, and we thought Nathan and Adelaide were like the secondary leads. Yes, the soubrettes.
They were. Jerry Zaks was the director, and he's classically a character man. So he was a lot more comfortable with Nathan and I think, than Sky and Sarah. So as it developed, and it was really interesting to watch because he cut a lot of Runyon land at the beginning because we were in New York. People were ahead of us. Mm-hmm. So I think that was one of the twists he did, was move the character people because he saw the response they were getting. And I remember the last dress rehearsal before the first preview, he moved the bows. So, and it really, this is classic. Peter Gallagher was, curious because he was a huge movie star and coming back in, and I understand.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I had nothing to do with that. And he said, absolutely, I know. But he said it was just such a twist,
Oh my God, that's so interesting.
And iconically, it changed the whole. Usually when people do now production of Guys and Dolls, they go last. So, and it thrust me into the leading character, leading category. I was not supporting.
Right.
It really changed that trajectory. And that's the other thing I talk to the kids about, I had a friend who said to me once, yeah, you wanted Tony, but it's a long time ago. And I was like, it's true. But do you know how hard that is to do in the politics and all the shows that come in and the landscape that's happening? And you've got all this competition. It's like winning the lottery. So I said to them, listen, I only look at things. I'm only as good as my last race. I've been to the table 4 times. I won once. I got lucky, and lucky means to me, hard work meeting opportunity.
Yeah.
But how that lands is next to impossible. So I do not take any of that for granted, nor do I lean on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
I always look to the next thing. It's always about the work for me. And I'm as jazzed about that. And that's why I still coach and all that stuff. I was helping somebody the other day with bridges in Madison County. And I go, isn't this fabulous? Look at all these jewels we found. I get chills thinking about it. That's why I'm never bored, ever. And I always say to my students, if you're bored, you're not working hard enough.
Yeah. So you've mentioned that Boop's director choreographer Jerry Mitchell said at one point that your generation is sort of like the last to have worked with the legends who created the art form of musical theater, which I think is so profound. Like, it's very important that you all work to pass the baton, these stories, this information down to the next generation. You worked with Comden and Green, Jerome Robbins, Howard Ashman, Abe Burrows. Like, which musical theater legends made the biggest impact on you?
Well, definitely Robbins.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of good ones, really. Arthur Lawrence, although, wow, what a curmudgeon, like the meanest man in show business, but not stupid, really smart. Jerry Gutierrez, who's no longer with us. I loved him as a director. All the people that floated through Robbins, Comden and Green and Sondheim and I mean, even Baryshnikov just came to watch, I mean, I was in the midst of, and watching them react, and he ran it like a ballet company. I learned so much from Robbins, and mostly by watching him work with other people.
Mm.
But just his focus and his storytelling. I mean, he never made one movement that it didn't tell the story. He was diligent about that.
Yeah.
And focus, just how to focus a stage. And boy, you had to be right there with him. And he was so detailed. I mean, I think I got a letter from him, and I was one of 65. He gave me, I don't know, there must have been 50 notes on there.
It's incredible.
He was wild. And he and I would go at it a little bit. And I think that's good, because I sat there and I went, there's no way Ethel Merman and Judy Holliday didn't come up against him, and he sort of liked it. But he was like, well, you really came up against me. And I was like, yes, sir, because I want to do the best, And so we really got on great.
Yeah, you cared. You care.
Yeah, and there's Jerry Zaks, and there's John Doyle, there's Tina Landau, just so many, Jack Plotnick, fabulous director, and so different than all the rest, and just brilliant, No, I've been so lucky that way. So that's why, I mean, even I think going back to the other question, Carol Channing, I think, told Andrew McCardle one time, love the fact that you were Annie, embrace it, and she's right. And so I didn't have that major of a transition to deal with that, because Carol Channing was like, this is what made you, embrace it. And these people made me. So I'm really trying to pass on those scenarios, the craft of it, and the craft of storytelling, and doing great musical theater. They did great musical theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That will never leave me. I'll probably, be on my deathbed going, I had one more thought.
It would seem that, like, on the heels of the Guys and Dolls success, that, you appeared in more on-screen roles then. So, like, a little laundry list for our listeners: Emily in Paris, Modern Family, Melissa and Joey, Drop Dead Diva, Scream Queens, Monk, House, My Father the Hero, Dave, Picture Perfect, Grey's Anatomy, Happy Endings, Monarch, Ugly Betty, Huff, and Spin City, among many others. You noted that Gerard Depardieu was a very generous scene partner in one of your, like, first lead roles in My Father the Hero. What was, like, the biggest adjustment when you stepped into the film and TV world, and, like, why was that so impressionable with Gerard?
Well, I never took a TV class. Nowadays kids in theater, have TV classes.
Totally.
And film classes. I just didn't get that luxury. And so I had to sort of make the jump. And still to this day, I'm probably a little bigger, if it were, on screen. My characters usually are bigger, but I could be, I've done, Law and Order. I've done, in Monk, I killed somebody in a boat with a, not in the boat, bathtub with a radio. I've done darker stuff. I've done wackier stuff. And I really think musical theater prepares you for now, because the landscape of TV, it's the golden age of television. And I always go, now we're the people you want to cast in these things, because there's so many different little genres, Yeah. And is this bigger than life? Is this, is it White Lotus? Is it, is it Yellow Jackets? Is it, there are just so many different styles. And I think being trained in musical theater, you're really ready for that. But I think the moment that comes to mind about Gerard Depardieu, he understood the camera so well. And it was a dance scene. And they had to go around the room. And I was like, oh my God, when am I going to say the line? When are they going to catch us? And he just looked at me and he goes, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. And he was just the sweetest thing. And I really didn't have to worry about anything about the camera, because he was just moving us around the thing. I loved him. And he was so, not only, he's like the sexiest guy, he's charming. And he really didn't speak very much English. He was mostly French. And we had 3 days where we sat at this table. So finally I just turned to him and said, Je m'appelle Fave, tu t'appelles Gerard à la bibliothèque, jambon, cravate. I just started saying all my first year French, and he about fell off the chair of laughing so hard. And we just got along after that. It was just so fun. But he was a brilliant guy. So I always remember that.
Yeah.
And I do the same, like when understudies go on, what can I do for you? What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
This is about you, dear. It's all about you. And I love that.
So I have to mention this. I would be remiss if I didn't because my brothers were obsessed with this film. You appear in the iconic 1985 martial arts comedy The Last Dragon as sort of like the bad guy's girlfriend, and you get to have this very Cyndi Lauper inspired number called Dirty Books. This film was a hit, and the soundtrack was supervised by Berry Gordy and featured DeBarge's big hit "Rhythm of the Night," which I watched this and I was like, oh wow, this is like huge. It features Vanity of the Prince entourage. Sadly, Dirty Books is not featured on this like iconic soundtrack. Have you ever dusted it off for a concert?
Have I ever done it in a concert?
Yeah, like have you ever dusted Dirty Books off to?
Honey, it doesn't have a huge arc. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. I understand, but it's good.
One of those.
It's a good
one
bit.
Of those records. I mean, and that happens a lot. Just a sidebar. I did First Wives Club, which we did in Chicago, and the music was written by Holland Dozier Holland. And I had this great song called "One More Time," and they wanted me to go out going "One more time, one more time, one more time." And I said to them, this really isn't good musical theater writing because she says "one more time." We should just make it "one more time." And I said, it's not like, an album where you hear it go out. And they just looked at me like I had three heads, And it's the same thing. It's hard to make music like that transfer over to musical theater. But I did stand up for the way he produced it. And he had cut it up, Berry Gordy. And they said, okay, you're going to mime this for the video. And I'm thinking, well, I never had an easier job in my life. I don't know why they're worried about that. I'm miming to my own voice, I'm just mouthing. And I said, but it's different than when we recorded it. And this is Suzanne DePass, who's huge now. I mean, she was working for him. And there's a long silence on the phone. She goes, yes. And I said, listen, I know I'm the talent, but I thought the storytelling was better, in the first thing. I'm just curious for a video, why he didn't go with his original thoughts. She said, can you be at the Carlisle at 4:00? I said, yes. So they had me come over at the Carlisle. He has two bodyguards in, his hotel room. I walk through the door. He has two boom boxes set up. And he sits across from me and he plays the first one that we recorded. And then he plays the second. And I'm sitting there going, oh, why did I say anything? This is not my genre. I should have just kept my mouth shut. And he just looks at me afterwards and he went, I wish I had 10 people like you. He said, I got a lot of yes people around me. And he said, how did you know that was story? I said, had you been Stephen Sondheim, please, no offense taken, I probably wouldn't have said anything. But I said, it's just a different genre than I'm used to. And all our genre is about storytelling. And we're making a video, And I said, it felt more complete. The arc was better. And he said, I agree. And he went back to the other recording. I love Berry Gordy. He used to take me out to dinner and call me his baby. Oh, yeah. It was great.
And
that's the first time I think I rode the limousine.
That is so cool. I had no idea we would get all of that from just needing to ask about The Last Dragon. But also Suzanne DePass is iconic, and for our listeners, was portrayed by Vanessa Williams in the Jackson Family TV miniseries. She was huge, and it still is, I think.
Oh, and she was young when I worked with her. I mean, she was a baby and so smart and right under him and just his right-hand man. I mean, I entered this world. It was like, Dorothy and Oz. I was just like, what have I walked into? And he really wanted me to come on to Motown as sort of a Cyndi Lauper type. And I went, oh, honey, I can't do that. I said, I can't do that. I'm not that. I'm a musical theater girl. I said, I'm not a pop singer. I wouldn't even know what to do in that land. Yeah. I said, it would be like me just making a movie every day about somebody else. Well, I said, I can't.
Was any of that intimidating to be working with Berry Gordy? I mean, this was 8 years before Guys and Dolls. You were, this was still early in your career. Were you?
Really, I don't know what to tell you. My dad was a piece of work. And he was a tough guy. And he really prepared me for this business and very difficult people.
Mm.
And I heard somebody say the other day, how do you know somebody's lived through trauma? And I think the answer was by the way they try to get somebody who doesn't like them to like them. And I thought,
This blew my
I
mind.
really understand that because I was constantly around really tough people. And I had that training ground because my dad was so difficult that he prepared me for very difficult people. And I was never scared because I thought, how bad could it be? They're not my dad. Yeah, is that all you got? I mean, I remember Arthur Lawrence laying me out one time in a rehearsal, and I'm just thinking he's a little short. I thought, is that all you got? My balloon was just going, when's this going to be over with? And then I think he expected me to cry, and I just went out, used the telephone, was a pay telephone, 25 cents. And I called my therapist and I said, we got work to do. This little man could really take me under. And I said, he's not going to. This was in Nick and Nora.
Right.
And Martin Charnin laid me out one time because the monologue I did had a bad word in it. And he was like, and I just kept thinking, wow, I really nailed that. He thinks I am this person. That's fabulous. And my dad taught me that because, I just was used to being up against that kind of personality.
Yeah.
And I've always taken it as a plus.
It's incredible.
Yeah, what a kernel of wisdom. I feel like you blew my mind there with how to people's trauma. Like, wow, people
That resonates.
Yeah,
yes.
for sure.
And I heard, is it Cole O'Mary?
Cole
Scola, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he had a tough childhood, and I said to my student, we were watching it on CBS Sunday Morning, and I said, do you realize how he told that story about? I think it was his dad chasing them out with a shotgun out of their house. And I said, did you see the way he told that story? He did not wallow. He did not cry. He did not. He told it as if it explained the beginning of his brilliance, is all I can say.
Yeah.
And I really, I think people need to take heed to that, because, I mean, listen, you can have your feelings. And I know I'm of a certain generation. And I say to them, feelings are sometimes overrated and they're not facts. So, have them, but then push through and go on,
We were particularly pleased to find out about this 1995 CBS sitcom High Society starring Jean Smart, Mary McDonnell, and you. It was sort of like an American ab fab. You were the small town best friend who arrived in New York pregnant, but they apparently you were in the first 6 episodes, but then not after that. So what the fuck was that about?
Well, you've really done your research. When they made, it was taken from a British comedy, Ab Fab. And I believe, and I hope I'm not misspeaking, the daughter was sort of the entity of my character.
Safi, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And I kept telling them because, I was like the homemaker and the this and that. And we'd have meetings and I'd say, guys, I got to tell you something. I'm your viewing audience. The people that are viewing High Society right now are homemakers, mothers, grandmothers. I said, this is your viewing audience. And I said, if you don't give her some kind of power, like Martha Stewart, like Ina Garten, and pull her into this world and make what she does powerful, this will not run. And that's exactly what happened.
You called it.
Right.
You knew.
I called it.
Yeah.
And I think it's Robert Horn, right? Who wrote it. He's, a funny writer, but again, structure.
Totally.
Structure. Arc. Giving your characters power, all of that. I find it so fascinating. I would love to either lead a class or join a class or have a class, about dramaturgically putting up a musical or a pilot, it's fascinating.
Yeah. I was thinking about, you mentioned Arthur Lawrence and Nick and Nora, I feel like he sort of was famous for being like a structuralist. Did your relationship evolve as time went on past Nick and Nora, or was there always a little bit of an impasse? Like, I didn't know if maybe you connected in that way, or if he was always just the little.
I think I was the only one he was speaking to at the end of the show. God. Honestly.
Yeah.
He told me I was making a big mistake because I had taken Guys and Dolls.
He loves to tell actresses that they made big mistakes. That's like one of his big things.
Yeah. He said, you're going to go on Guys and Dolls from this? And I went, yes, sir. He said, well, it's a revival. And I went, it's an iconic role.
Right.
He said, well, I think you're making a big mistake. And I said, well, I beg to differ. And we just left it at that. I said, we can agree to disagree. But, that first, when he laid me out the first time, and I did get help from my therapist. And I call it my sliding glass doors. And I didn't ask him too much after that. But my character kept reappearing as the murder victim, And so I'd have to sort of build on that. I mean, it was an interesting sort of thing. And also, I know people are going to go, what? I don't think Arthur Lawrence liked musicals.
Yeah, I hear that.
And he kept, really not wanting me to sing anything. He wanted everything kind of talked. And I was like, honey, this is this format. And I had this great song called Men, which I recently went back and listened to because Jesse Tyler Ferguson sent it to me. And he goes, WTF. He goes, wow. I had never heard that before. And I said, well, maybe I should listen to it again. And I listened to it and I was like, damn, that was pretty good. I was in my prime and it was just like, and I don't say that often because I usually look forward to where I'm going, but it was a great, great number. And she was a great, great character and interesting. So I just kept doing my work sort of behind the scenes. And because she was like this little mousy character. And then she worked for this, sort of like Joe Kennedy producer, and then she fell in love with him, and then he took her to Hollywood, and then she started appearing in like all these, like TCM gowns, and and like I throw myself against the back wall, and Arthur Lawrence goes, how do you know how to stand like that? And I was like, turn classic movies, don't you watch them? And then she fell in love with women, and then she got into cocaine. I mean, it was a fabulous character, and so I think he grew to respect what I was doing. And then he started getting mad at other people, and then there was inner fighting between, all the creatives. I mean, it was one of those things. So by the end, and then I did well in Guys and Dolls. And he was pretty much nice to me the rest of my life. Even came to see me in King and I, which he told Mary Rogers I was totally wrong for. And she said, you should view her before you say that, Arthur. And he came to see it and he went, wow. You can even play Anna. And I said, well, honey, you got to write it for me to do it.
Period.
Oh, my God. Mary Rogers, of course. Oh, my God. Incredible.
Just to close the loop, we'll say, on film and TV work, Faith, you do a Jersey accent on Melissa and Joey as Joey Lawrence's mom, and then you do like a Southern accent as this sort of, I'm going to say a sort of a villain on an episode of Emily in Paris. What is your favorite accent or dialect to pull out of your bag of tricks?
Well, Greg Barnes, the costumer, said to me last time, okay, we're going to have that bottle of wine, but you have to do British and Southern in the same night for me. He loves when I pull on the British. And I had never done a proper British accent until I played Anna in The King and I. Mm-hmm. And I was really worried about it because I wanted to be believable. And I had this little voice in me. It kept saying, yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, come on. Who's going to believe that? But, my great-great-great-grandmother was from Bath. Mm. And I have English humor in me. And Mary Rogers sort of gave me the door to walk through. Gertrude Lawrence, she said, was a comedian. Mm-hmm. So I kept finding sort of ways to go through the door. Because I always say to my students, what door? What do we have in our bag? What's in our arsenal already? And my girlfriend, who's a wonderful acting and creative coach, and she does a lot of Broadway. She did Joseph. She was Laurie Beachman's understudy, and then she went on to do roles in Showboat and Les Mis, and she did the tour of Les Mis. Her name's Roz Cairns. I'd call her and I go, oh my God, am I going to ever get this? And she goes, just keep repeating the dialect, coach, until it becomes natural. And that's exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So inherently, I started to find that. I did an Irish accent for the dead.
Right.
And a man of no importance. We always have to sing it. And I might have done like Portuguese one time. But I love Southern because for the most part, nobody's ever really asked me to do a Southern role. But when I saw that character in Emily in Paris, I had this friend, and she's probably going to write me about it, Claudia Stepp. She's from Fort Worth. She'd go, Faith, it's Claudia. I'm at LaGuardia. I'm mad as hell at Rod, her husband. She'd say, can I come stay with you until I check into the plaza? And I just took her voice, because this woman was from Dallas. And I just took her voice and just made totally, Judith Robertson, Friends in American Louvre. And I grew up in Virginia,
Yeah.
and women down at the Farm Basket, which was a great little, sold flowers and gifts and all cheese straws and fermented cheese and, little country hams and stuff. They go, Faith, your mama, she looks great. How is it up there in New York on Broadway?
So sweet.
And that's the way they talk, And I was telling Greg these stories, and he said, okay, I'll have a bottle of wine with you, but you got to talk like that. He just loves that.
No, it's so good. Also, the specificity of the regional Southern is so nice.
Yes.
So good.
So many theater actors sometimes are just giving generic Southern, and you're like, oh, the regionalisms, the Dallas is so good.
Oh, no, you can't. I remember Light in the Piazza, that girl was from North Carolina. My cousins are from there, and I just thought, oh, yeah, I know that. It's all, and if you're near the mountains, it's a little twang.
Mm-hmm.
And I always use my friend Roz's mother. Faith gets an A. Faith gets an A because she made her bed. Rosalind, you get a D.
I love
It is an art form. It really is an art.
Completely.
Okay, so we're going to harken back to some of your other theater history.
These
here.
are great questions, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. We're so pleased.
Fun.
We're so pleased to be sitting down with you. This is such a huge piece of theatrical history. You were offered the role of Audrey in the original off-Broadway production of Little Shop of Horrors, but famously couldn't get out of a contract in order to take the part. Can you share that audition experience with us and what it was like when you finally did step into the role when you replaced Ellen Green?
Yes. Well, first of all, to be in the presence of Howard Ashman, and Alan Menken, and at that time, I knew I was sitting before greatness, and I had the wherewithal to at least know that. And I had come to New York in 1980 and had gotten my first job by raising my hand in the audience. They were doing a Q&A. My friend Jim Walton, who I just went out with last night, we went to CCM together. He's a wonderful actor and dancer, and Crazy for You, Far, Far Away, or Far From Away. And but we went to school together. He was a couple years older than me, and my mom had come visit me, and I said, we're going down to see Scrambled Feet at Village Gate. I'm going to circle back around now to Little Shop. But anyways, I was sitting there, and my mom said, you'd be good in this role. And I was like, what? I said, that woman's sophisticated. She's 10 years older than me. She goes, yeah, but you could do every character in those, blackout sketches. And you could play the piano and you could sing. And my mom's not Mama Rose. So then I have to listen to her when she says something like that. So I raised my hand, and they said, yes, do you have a question? And I said, yes, do you need another girl? And they just looked at me and they said, yeah, well, we're looking for somebody for the Charles Playhouse in Boston, because Evelyn, who originated the woman's role, who was not in the show that night, they said, is leaving. We need somebody. And they said, do you play the piano? And I said, yes. And they said, do you sing? I said, of course. Anyways, got with the stage manager, got an audition, got the job. And that's how I got my first agent. So I hadn't been with this agent that long, but this was one of the new works that was really coming along. And I'm like reading this, and I'm like, it's about a man-eating plant who sings Feed Me, and that character seems a little dark but light. I thought, oh man, I know who this girl is. Mm-hmm. So I went in and sang the songs. I sang my songs on audition. They called me back. I started to sing their music, and it just fit like a glove. So then they offered me the job, but I was working because of Scrambled Feet. They had hired all of us. There was such a thing as industrials, which I don't even know if they exist anymore. This was for IBM, and it was a really good paying job. And we were going to fabulous places like Hawaii and, down in Miami at Fontainebleau, and then we were going to Bermuda. And I mean, it was a fabulous, fabulous job. San Francisco, and well paid. But this was at the WPA for nothing. But I knew it was going to be a huge hit.
Yeah.
So I went into the head of IBM and said, the guy I dealt with, that was head of the development and all this. I said, please, could I get out of my contract? Because this is about a man-eating plant. And I said, who sings Feed Me? And he just looked at me like again, 3 eyes. And I said, I just know this could really launch my career. He said, honey, you have a contract right here. I can't let you out. So then Ellen Green did a beautiful job, and by then I was working up at good speed, and, we opened the New York Times, and her Hirschfeld was in the, she won the drama desk for it. My friends were like, don't say anything to Faith. And I was like, oh, please, you guys, this is her time, don't worry about it. Yeah. It'll be my time sometime. And honestly, I really felt had I started that role, I might not have gotten Adelaide. They're in the same
universe,
kind of genre.
Yeah.
And this is where your spirituality and knowing yourself and just like believing in yourself as just an artist, it's like, it's just not my time. It didn't work out. But then they called me when I was doing, it's funny, I saw Lance Roberts. I was playing his girlfriend. He's in Just in Time right now. Mm-hmm. And we did Walls at the Huntington Hartford and it was a bad play. I mean, it was just bad. It was just, we knew we weren't going anywhere. And we were in tech. And so they called me to audition again for a little shot. But I was going to have to fly, take the red eye. And we were in tech. But there was a great stage manager, and I to this day, I can't remember her name, but she said, Faith, is your grandfather dead or alive? And I said, he's dead. She said, great. We just won't say when.
It's beautiful.
Because she wanted me to, go get that job.
Yeah.
And it was a magical night, too. It was American Airlines. I got bumped up to first class. I got a meal. It was great. Got off the plane, went in. But, by then, Howard Ashman, Ellen Green had sort of put this Marilyn Monroe stamp on it. All I can tell you was more ethereal than I am. I'm not like Katie Finnernan has an ethereal humor to her. I'm more vaudeville. I'm more threes. I'm a little more grounded. And by that, I'm more like Judy Holliday.
Yeah.
As opposed to Marilyn Monroe. So I could tell we were sort of dancing around it, and he was looking at me like, could this possibly move into that,
Right.
So then he hired me for it, but we shuffled around that. And that was hard for him because then he had, Ellen in his mind.
Yeah.
It was tough for him to sort of accept that. I think he appreciated my talent and all of that, but I was a different entity.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then I realized that Ellen went on to do Adelaide at the Hollywood Bowl many years later. So
I know.
Interesting.
Well, it is a similar, thing and everything. And she was brilliant in a very ethereal way. That's just not, everybody's got their, and that's why I always tell kids, everybody can sing the same song. It's point of view.
Yep.
Yeah, they sort of live in the same world. I feel like Lily St. Regis also lives in their world.
That's right. There's a lot of them. And Valentina has some of that.
Yeah, I see that.
Even though she's an astrophysicist.
Right.
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about like all of this, and you already mentioned Anna because you replaced Donna Murphy in The King and I. Like you've never been shy to replace on Broadway, and like you replaced in The Little Mermaid as Ursula. As Miss Hannigan and Annie, and then
great roles is what I require.
Like some stars don't seem to want to replace. Like, is there any what makes you say yes?
The role itself, the payoff.
You just want to play great roles.
Exactly. That's the requirement, because I never have a fear because I'm a gatherer of information. I'll tell you a story. When I did staged concert of Wonderful Town at LA Opera with Roger Bart, I was looking. Donna Murphy is she's exquisite to study, and for Anna too. And I study all what she does, and she's very mindful. I mean, there is no I not dotted. There's no T not crossed. She is she's one of the most methodical actors I've ever followed behind. And even when the dressers I had in going into King and I, they said, do you want to, pull in your own dressers? I went, are you nuts? They've worked with Donna Murphy. Every T is crossed. Why would I want to? And first of all, and unemploy those people. I mean, I'm not stupid.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm not Donna Murphy. I have a different demeanor. I have, so I'm not looking to be her, but I'm studying her. And I studied her as Ruth. And then I studied who originally did Wonderful Town.
Oh, Rosalind Russell.
Yeah, Rosalind Russell. Then there was a British actress that did it, and I listened to that, and I listened to all these icon, and I thought, "Oh, that's good. I'm going to steal. I steal from the best. Oh yeah, I'm going to take that. Oh, that's a good thing." And then I kind of throw it out.
Yeah. And
then I go, now I'm Ruth. Well, I know Ruth. I moved to the city. I'm a smart girl. Maybe I wasn't a writer, but maybe there was a writer in there because I'm a storyteller. And I just go, but I've always been knowledgeable. I've always taken care of people. I've always been codependent. And that's the basis of who this woman is, And then I start to look through my own lens. And so for me to follow somebody else, that never bothers me. I don't have fear about that.
Yeah.
I just have to really, just like you all, I do my research and I start the slate clean and I think, what have I got in spades? What's not like me, right? I always have 2 columns. And then what if I don't have anybody to go from, what if this were to happen to me? What would it feel like?
Is it that like formulaic that you're actually creating a column and you're like, this is my doorway in for what's different and this is what is different? This is what is
really
this is
how I work.
I love
and
that.
It's how I teach other people. And they might be different, but I sit down with them. I mean, the other day I'm thinking, how are you like this character? How do you relate to this character? Who do you know like this character? I mean, sometimes it's my aunt. Sometimes it's my best friend's mother. I've used her for a lot of things. Sometimes it's my brother's friend from a small town. I understood the way I watch people all the time. And that's why I say observe, 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 observe. And I'm pretty methodical like that. And that's how I'm like my dad, who's a nuclear engineer, not for physics, but for problem solving and for tearing things apart, putting things back together. I'm very clinical and pretty methodical.
We talked to the aforementioned and Your Noises Off co-star Katie Finneran about her experience working with James Lapine on that 2012 revival of Annie, in which she starred as Miss Hannigan, and the production got some heat for trying to present like somewhat of like a grittier, more realistic Annie. Was anything about walking into that production challenging, and can you talk about how you particularly approached that role? Because like for me, it was so iconic as like Dorothy Loudon and then Carol Burnett in the film, and then this production felt so different.
Well, listen, I'm a huge fan of James Lapine, right? I did Falsetto Land with him. I love the man. And I always say when people ask me about him, he directs like a painter. And so that's very different than vaudeville.
Yeah.
And Annie is written in a particular style. It's sort of like Runyon Land for Guys and Dolls. It's hard to make that dark. Because it's a very specific style. So anytime you're playing around with that, you got to be really, really careful. And I'll tell you, and James will hear this, when I saw that he was directing it, I was like, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe he needs a job. I don't know. It felt like, I was surprised.
Yeah. Because
he's so cerebral. And it was, I think he's from like, he's from a little town in Ohio. And because he always feels like he's English or something, or proper or from the National Theater. He just always seems so, just cerebral and super smart and sophisticated,
Yes.
But he's not a fan really of humor, honestly.
Yeah.
And even when I would put humor into the, hospital room at Falsetto Land, oh, mommy, oh, yummy. And I'd look at those lesbians from next door,
Yeah.
just like, oh my Lord, and I would get a laugh, right? And he came up to me and he goes, be careful with that. And I went, well, I'll be real careful. But honey, you need some humor in this funeral here.
Yeah.
Or memorial, whatever we're doing for, Wizard or whatever. And so I definitely pushed him, right? And he was a little afraid of that. So that gave me a clue. That's why when I saw his name, I went, okay, this is Annie.
Yeah.
And when Andrew McCardle came to see me in the show, she said, oh, I didn't know we were doing Secret Garden. And that's what she said to me. And she's real smart, that Andrew McCardle.
Yeah.
She's real smart.
Such a pro.
So I want to tell you the truth now. I may get a call from him. But his associate director was Wes Grantham, who loves humor. And I watched, because I went behind Jane Lynch, but I also studied Katie's, because I had to know what I was walking into. And I thought, you know what? They're forgetting the threes.
Mm-hmm.
They're forgetting vaudevilles in threes. It's a very specific style of humor. And Dorothy Loudon is my gal, and I had seen her.
The best.
So I thought, oh, I got some work to do. I'm going to have to slide in here real careful. And usually I go with what is. So everybody's comfortable because I'm the new girl. And then I start trying some things. But I knew to go to Wes Grantham and say, hey, I got a couple of thoughts. Can you look at some things? Because I just knew it wasn't James's thing. So every time James and I were like, hey, how are you? I'm just peeking around the corner going, hey, good, okay. Wes, get over here. I gotta, and I would, and Wes would help me sort of get my threes back in there. And slowly I got the vaudeville back in there to the point that Martin Charnin and Charles Strauss kissed my feet when they came to the show. The same thing happened with Ursula too, Alan Menken just loved, because I understood Pat Carroll. I understand. I'm old school.
Yeah.
I'm old school. So I understand that. And that's what Valentina, she's old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to let you know that information had made its way around the New York community, that people were like, Annie's got its juice back. Faith is in the role.
Well, and I was on the original short list, and I thought, I'm really right for this. And Katie is a beautiful comedian. I mean,
she's brilliant.
But she's ethereal. Again, it's an ethereal kind of humor. Yeah. And I think she would tell you that.
Yeah, we talked to her, and she said it was one of the most difficult experiences of her career. And she was and she even said in a New York Times interview, this was a real challenge because James and I were really not aligned, and it maybe just was not the right fit.
Well, and honestly, John Doyle's a little that way. He backs away from the humor aspect.
Right.
And, Catered Affair was very, very dark, but him directing Hello Dolly, it would be interesting to see,
Yeah.
And I love him, and I learned so much from him, I felt like I could do Tennessee Williams after that.
Well, I was about to say, your work in A Catered Affair was so beautiful, and it was so
very
grounded. Yeah, so different, but it was you were carrying all the emotional weight of this very serious musical drama, where the songs were sort of woven vaguely into the story. I was just it was so impressive to see you do that, being so familiar with your vaudevillian kind of work on stage. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and I can cut all that stuff and go to the other way. It's what's required. I look at what's required. Right. And I've learned so much from working. John Doyle is one of my favorite directors, as Tina Landau is.
Yeah.
And that's why it just never gets old for me. I'm always looking to the next thing. Jerry's been so fun because he's, more into the physical world, watching him, I'm more dramaturgy, right? He can make something out of anything. He's got a wildly creative, the choreography, and his ensemble is just iconic.
Okay, I know that we're running you ragged here, Faith, but it feels very important to address the 2001 production of Bells Are Ringing, where you starred as Ella Peterson in this like iconic Julie Stein, Comden and Green musical, famously written for Judy Holliday, who we've talked a lot about today. I love this show. I know you love this show too. It's such a great showcase for every single one of your talents because it demands musical comedy perfection, but also a grounded actor who can really bring heart to the piece. How do you look back on that experience of bringing what I think is a dream role of yours to Broadway? And are there any other dream roles that are still on your bucket list?
Oh, wow. Well, it was very challenging, mostly because of Mitchell Maxwell, who produced it. He was this tricky man. And there were a couple weeks where he was not paying people, and it was very stressful. And that's why I'm saying, and I felt the weight of the show on me. That was one of those shows where I really felt it was on me. The show was nominated for Best Revival, but I was the only one nominated from the show. And that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who says it does, I can't believe they're telling the truth, because, you've got such a group working together, and your cast and your crew and everything. And then, it's like, ugh. So I felt the pressure of that. And I really had wanted to do this role. I'd done songs for it, the Comden and Green roasts, and any time I could sort of get that in there, I thought I was right for Ella Peterson, even though I'm very different than Judy Holliday, but there are some semblances there. That's the right word. Again, lots of pressure, and you want it to work, and didn't get the reviews we thought.
It's crazy.
It didn't last long.
Yeah.
I remember painting my house the rest of the summer. I just took time out and just painted, because somebody wanted like $5,000 to paint the inside of my house. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to get up every morning and paint my house.
Yeah.
And that's the way I sort of dealt with it.
I have to say, I wasn't familiar with the show, but I remember I was living in Missouri. It was the year before I moved to New York for school, and I had read about your performance in Bells Are Ringing, probably on the nightmare known as All That Chat, where people were just waxing poetic about your performance and this production that wasn't getting the reviews that it deserved based on what you guys were doing on that stage. And so I was able, by the thrill of the public library, to be able to go back and watch the recording of the last performance of the show, which is what's in the Performing Arts Library that anyone can access. You get a standing ovation after I'm going back, and stops the show. It's this beautiful moment. Beth Fowler comes over and taps your wrist. It's just really a stunning moment. Can you share with our audience what it feels like to have that as a performer, to stop the show?
And you know what? I don't remember that. Isn't that funny?
It was beautiful.
I'd have to go back and look at it. And by the way, a shout out to Beth Fowler, my friend David Garrison,
he was great
and Mark
too.
Kudish. Mark Kudish, I love that Kudish.
You guys were so great together. He carried you off stage at the end of the curtain call. It was clear there was a lot of love for the show amongst the performers, at least, and I thought that really translated. And I love the material, so it was a real pleasure to see that moment. But what does it feel like to stop a show on Broadway?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, all I can tell you is anytime I walk onto a Broadway stage, I'm at home. I feel more home and more connected to something, because I always tell people I'm very nomadic, and I never really feel right in any city, wherever I've lived. But I feel at home there. And to me, that's been the most joyous thing about being back here in Boop. It's just walking out and going, oh, I know what this is. This feels real good.
It's a blessing to have you back on the New York stage. I feel like New York feels the same way about you. So thank you for being back. Anytime you want to come back, we'd love to have you here. Okay, we are going to power through into what we call the rapid fire. This is where we get to get all of our stupidity in, Faith. So please bear with us. It's going to be rapid for us. We get every last thing
you
in.
have no stupidity.
Well,
Bless
thank you.
you.
We'll
Bless you.
just you wait. So we're just going to throw this all at you, Faith. It is rapid for us, but if you need to take your time to tell a story, feel free. Okay. You star in an episode of Grey's Anatomy where you arrive in the ER because your IUD got stuck on your ex-husband's penis piercing. What we call in the biz what is it called?
Prince
Prince Albert? Yes. Anyway, I don't know. Made the joke and I couldn't do it. Was there an intimacy coordinator on that set in 2007? Because you were like riding him.
Yeah, well, two things. They asked me to sit down. My agent asked me to sit down before he asked me to do this role and told me about it. He said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Oh, okay, I am now." And then he told me about it, and I went, "Oh Lord, okay." Um, I don't know if it was really called. What did you call it?
Intimacy coordinator.
Yeah, I don't know if they had those names now like they have for HR and KK and all these things. But there was a pillow that we had between the two of us.
Okay.
And honey, it was on that gurney and we were there for like 3 days. And by the end I was like, fuck this, and I just like took the pillow and he was a love, Ari. And we had a really good time on that. But it wasn't till years later my son saw that episode and went, "Mom, what the hell?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was hoping you didn't see that." But we had a great time and it was very unusual. And people still to this day talk about that episode.
Yeah, it was a good bit. Okay, you do some great work in the 2003 indie dramedy Our Very Own as a stuck-up Southern head of the Chamber of Commerce. It also stars former guest of this show, Dale Dickey and Beth Grant, both of whom we love. You have this great scene in a car where you crane your neck in and out of the window, almost like a cockatoo. Damien called it. Where did you pull that physical tick from? We're going to clip it and try to put it online because it's such a bit of physical comedy brilliance.
That came from me. I pulled down the window and stuck my head out, and I think I had sunglasses on and had them down on my nose. Allison Janney and I had done, okay, this is random. Allison Janney and I had done a reading of The Women. It's the only time that we had ever done anything together, and we played best friends in that, just for the reading. And but she was my understudy for Bad Habits at Manhattan Theater Club, so I knew her from that. And just knew what an incredible, not only actress, but person she was. So I had moved out to LA in 2003, and I was in a nail salon, and she comes into the nail salon. She goes, "Faith, I didn't know you were out here." And I go, "Yeah, I just moved out here. My son, didn't want us to have a nanny anymore. And so I'm trying to just, make it work in TV and Larry and I be home and not have a babysitter or a nanny." And so about 2 days later, my agent calls me. She goes, "Have you been hanging out with Allison Janney?" And I said, "No. I saw her at a nail salon, but I haven't been really, it's not like we went to lunch." And she said, "Well, she wants you to do this movie that a friend of hers wrote called Our Very Own. And it's going to take, it's an indie movie. It's going to take place in Shelbyville, Tennessee. And you're going to play this character that is like this, this, this." And she said, "Do you want to read it?" And I said, "No. Just tell her I'll do it." And she said, "You don't want to read it?" And I went, "Honey, if Allison Janney tells you you're right for something, I'm sure you're right." I said, that's just who we are. So I took it, and I had honestly one of the best times. I mean, all the extras were really people in his life.
Oh, that's so cool.
That wrote it. And this woman, I'll never forget, we were traveling in a bus, or like a big van coming back to the thing. And she said, "Do you know the woman you're playing?" And I said, "No, I've never met her." She said, "You are just like her. You are just like her." And I said, "Well, honey, I know these people." I said, "I grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia." And I said, and my mother's from Meridian, Mississippi. And I said, "I know small towns and I know all these characters, and I've just kind of put them all in this one kind of character, And it was one of the most fun. And I remember Allison Janney and Cheryl Hines sitting in the back laughing at me because I had to sing the Star Spangled Banner off key, like half a step, and they were peeing themselves. It was so much fun.
It's a great little movie. We're going to put some clips online.
Great.
Okay, Faith, IMDb lists you as appearing in an uncredited role on Mad Men, but we could not find you. The episode is Guy walks into an advertising agency, which is a great episode, but what the fuck gives?
I never did anything on Mad Men.
I was like, maybe you were cut out, and then I was like watching it,
No,
and
and somebody else told me about that, but to my knowledge and cognitive recollection, I've never appeared on Mad Men.
okay.
Faith, what was more difficult, standing your ground opposite a very hammy Martin Short in Little Me, or starring opposite a duck in your New York debut that you talked about, Scrambled Feet?
A real duck, a real live duck.
A real live duck.
Hands down, the duck was more difficult. Definitely, the duck was more difficult. I mean, Martin, he's a lovely person, and he looks at himself. I mean, he will tell you, oh, I'm a comedian. I'm a comedian, and he always say that. And I said to him one time, I said, I think you underestimate yourself, because I said I saw you in that film with Dennis Quaid, where he goes into like his body or something like that, or I can't remember
space?
whose body it was, or somebody takes that little machine and goes in. And I said, you're a fabulous actor.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, my fans would never put up with that. And I said, I think you underestimate your fans. But he was lovely. But, Neil Simon saw that Martin Short was sort of taking over. And he said to me, he goes, you guys are ruining my play. And I was like, we're ruining your play? I said, honey, I don't do anything up there that Rob Marshall doesn't tell me what to do. I said, you talk to Rob Marshall. And I said, this it has a mind of its own now,
Right.
And I said, if you have a problem with anything I'm doing, talk to Rob Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Faith, as we mentioned earlier, the 1998 concert, Broadway's Leading Ladies, was formative for us and featured a cavalcade of musical theater legends: Julie Andrews, Liza Minnelli, Nell Carter, Bebe Neuwirth, Dorothy Loud, and Audra McDonald, Marin Mazzie, Jennifer Holliday, Judy Kuhn, Leah Delaria, Rebecca Luker, Elaine Stritch, Andrea McCarter, Priscilla Lopez, Deborah Monk, Linda Eder, and you. Tell us everything about being backstage at Carnegie Hall with this wonderful and motley crew.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think I shared a dressing room with Elaine Stritch.
Oh my God.
Oh boy.
Which was an iconic moment, which I've told that story in a lot of my acts throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved her. Man, she's a piece of work. That was an iconic moment, but I have to say, and I just want to get this in there, we did it for, I think it was it American Airlines? It was some, it might not have been American. It was some airlines, but we never got paid for the DVD.
Oh.
Or the recording. They gave us 2 round trip first class tickets on, I think is what we got. But they asked me to do the next one, which was called Love or something. And I said, the musicians get paid. Do you think we just pay our rents and our mortgages with nothing? I said, sweeties, if you guys are going to make monies off the DVD and the CDs, your gals have to get paid.
That's messed up.
Yeah, that's fucked up. I'm glad we have this on the record now.
And I said no to the next one.
Good.
Because I just was like, that's not fair.
It's really not fair.
Somebody's making that money.
Yeah, because everyone that I know from our era that grew up with that concert had the DVD. It's iconic to everyone. I mean, it really has made the rounds. It's still,
never got a dime.
I'm so sorry. That's messed up. Okay. What was more challenging, managing Ursula's cumbersome costume in The Little Mermaid, or managing a 3-foot poodle wig in the Kathleen Turner-led Lifetime movie Friends at Last?
Oh, I didn't remember that. I'd have to say Ursula, because
costume.
It's funny. The dresser that I had is on boob. Mel, she's not my dresser at the moment, but love her. She was a great dresser, and she called in a sub one night. And there was a crank on the back because there were 2 apparatuses. There were the tentacles, and then there was the cape that you flipped up and literally was 30 feet in the air. And I mean, I whipped that around like a boa, and I really cracked the wire twice. They had to replace it twice when I was there, because I would move it around and, really just completely moved it. Well, she forgot to turn the crank all the way. And I was during Poor Unfortunate Souls, and I went, poor unfortunate clunk. And the whole apparatus fell off the back. And I looked down, and the eels were like, ooh. And Ariel was like, ah. And the, musical director was like, ah. And I thought, oh, shit. So the eels hurled the apparatus off stage. They got the apparatus, but then I was left with no cape to flip up at the last moment when I was supposed to hit the big note. But I had my fingernails on those gloves, So I went down to my ankles and I went, and my hands kept rising up my leg, up my body, and I did this big belt note. So then she had to sign the contract. So I walked over to her like Mae West, and I went, not just any darling. And I took my finger. I go, use mine. And she had to sign the contract with my fingernail. It was pretty funny. Speaking of which, I just had a moment the other night in Boop where my lovely Stephen DeRosa stepped on my shoe and my foot came out of my shoe. You guys weren't there that night, were you?
We were at the Sunday matinee.
This was Saturday night. And I looked like a stump along. And I mean, I even said, just call me Stump. And we had to get through that. I loved every minute of it. I don't know what it is. My body relaxes and I go, oh, this will be interesting. And that's the way I always react to everything.
Yeah.
But that poor dresser was like, I'm so sorry, I forgot to. I said, honey, it was hilarious. Never let it happen again. But the kids love it when, I fell one night. Oh. My heel caught my lace and I just did a layout like right on the stage, And they go, how did you? And I go, honey, get me up. We got to sing. I love when stuff like that happens. My brain just slows down and it's like, ooh, what are you going to do?
Yeah, the audience loves it too, obviously.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, Faith, we're almost done here, but we need to ask this. In 1981, you were in MAME with Dixie Carter, and former guest of this show, Vicki Lewis, was in the ensemble. She told us that she held Dixie's spit cup. Tell us everything you remember.
Vicki and I went to school together at CCM.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Honey, I know me some Vicki Lewis. Yes, I love Dixie. I was scared of her. Hal Holbrook, though, she was married to at the time, he loved me as Gloria Upson. And I got a lot of laughs as Gloria Upson. And she didn't like that too much. Because she was Mame,
Yeah.
And so that didn't go down too well. But she's been lovely to me throughout the years. I've only seen her a couple of times, but I love me some Dixie Carter.
An icon.
Yes. Spit cup. Okay. Faith Prince, last question, very important. Years ago, Alice Ripley told me that Christopher Walken kept pickles and pickled okra and onions in the pockets of his costume during the run of James Joyce's The Dead and used to turn his back and pop them in his mouth during the show. Confirm or deny?
Yes, confirm. And they told me going into the show, I hope you like garlic. Garlic. And they told me that's what was going on. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But it was in his wool suit.
Was it motivated by some sort of actorly choice?
Honey, I have that child doesn't need motivation. That child did not need any motivation. Mr. Walken he beats to his own drum, sort of like Jack Nicholson. And I was just totally fascinated by him. And back to the point that he didn't, Richard Nelson, said he does not want to rehearse, but he has to do the put in when I came into the show because I replaced Blair Brown. And I said, oh, that should be interesting. Okay. So it's, like improv. And so he comes back to my dressing room after the put in and so you're me, you guys are me. He goes, so I see that perhaps we should maybe have a look-see on this scene since we have never done this before. And he finally looks at me in the eye at the very end of that. And I said, yeah, sounds good. You want to chat about it? He goes, maybe you could come to my room. And I went, I'll be right there. So we talked about it and everything and just had I don't even remember what was said, but, never said another word to me. And that night we're performing and, I was with him for a few weeks. And anyways, I leaned on the sofa and put my hand on his knee and the rest of the cast went, audibly gasped during the show. And I came off and everybody was like, you can't touch him. I said, I'm playing his wife. And they said, he doesn't like to be touched. And I said, well, he can fucking tell me himself. What about that? I said, I'm playing his wife. You know, he never said one word to me. And I kept the word, I kept it in. I got on with him really beautifully, but he was the only one that did not have an Irish accent.
What a choice. What a choice.
But I'm telling you, that cast was tight. I don't know what they had been through, but I was just like, I'm leaving the luggage at the door. I'm just doing my job. And
my goodness.
Richard Nelson, just kept directing me. And I was just, but Alice Ripley and Emily Skinner really pulled me. I mean, really helped me. They were there for me. And I remember Marnie Nixon kept turning me around a certain way, and they go, don't touch her again, the two of them. And she goes, well, Blair always did it that way. And they'd say in unison, she's not Blair. It was hilarious. And Marnie Nixon was just, she was a hoot.
Oh my God, I completely forgot she was
show.
In that. That is incredible that Marnie Nixon was in that show. I completely spaced on that fact.
Yeah.
Faith Prince, this has been one of the true highlights of this podcast. Thank you for being on You Might Know Her From and being the beautiful craftsperson that you are. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. And I loved your questions.
What is so thrilling about Faith Prince and her approach to the work is that she's never going for the laughs. But there is something, Anne and I saw Boop, as mentioned, on the Sunday matinee prior to interviewing Faith. We had such a ball, and I really, in my own psychoses, really believed that she was playing to me. We don't know her. She doesn't know us. We had never met her. But she was doing this thing, as mentioned in the podcast, where she's shaking her hands and head like a busybody as out of concern for where is Betty?
Where is Betty?
And her tongue was kind of sticking out, and I was like, she is playing to me. She is in on it. And then she was she wasn't, but she was that was how I was directed. So I was she's grounding it in the reality of the show and playing it truthfully. Some people are just funny, and I always think about how people acting school, they always talk about comedy is harder. It's interesting because that doesn't feel like my approach to life or people in my life's issue, because so many people in my world are, I feel maybe because they're traumatized or mentally ill, that everyone approaches things with comedy. When Faith said that thing about the way
you can tell when a person
you can identify a person's trauma with the way that they deal with people who don't like them. I would blew my mind, and I just feel watching her do comedy, but grounding it was really a true gift.
Yeah, I think there's only been a handful of times in my life where I've seen someone perform, and I feel watching Faith live and then doing a lot of research on shows that I wasn't in New York to see and going and watching them at the public library. Shout out to the public library Theater on Film Library, an incredible resource in New York City if you're able to go. She is, I think, almost manufactured in a factory to be good at musical theater. It's AI created the perfect person to do musical theater comedy. And then you watch her do a Catered affair, and it's heavy drama, and she's also so good because she's a brilliant actor. I mean that with all love, is that she is, I think, just one of the greats, and I think it's a dying art form, and I'm so glad to hear her talk about her relationships with all of the legends in this industry.
Completely.
It just, we just really left the interview role because we were so excited to get so many gems on the record. So we hope you liked it. We hope that you go explore Faith Prince. We hope you go see Boop, honestly, because we had a great time. And
it's so much fun.
Let us know what you think. You've got to give into it. If you're ready to give into it, go see Boop.
Honestly, it's fun to see a big splashy musical with tap dancing. I mean, that's what I keep saying when everyone's like, oh, Boop. But I'm telling you, it's the best time. Right. You can listen to our full breakdown of it on the Patreon as well. We saw Boop and Smash basically back to back, and we really were on a ride.
Uh-huh.
Also, I just want to shout out seeing Faith in My Father the Hero, which I believe was a formative film for elder millennials, people around our age, but was not something I had watched as a kid. And I watched it for the first time, and I was like, oh my god, like I like knew, like my pop culture brain knew Katherine Heigl was in it, but then I was like, oh, she's like, it's not like she's like, this is like pre-Rose, whatever that show, Roswell and Grey's Anatomy, Katherine Heigl. It's like a 13-year-old Katherine Heigl and Gerard Depardieu, but you know, Faith Prince is the next principal role, and she's very good. And I loved hearing how Gerard Depardieu was such a like a pro and made her feel safe, because I think it was her big, I mean, she was obviously in The Last Dragon, which is also discussed, but it was her first like big film role, especially coming out of Guys and Dolls. And she's so good. And I think like she, like something about her in that film also like reminded me of a young Annalee Ashford, or, you know, like, or Annalee maybe is like a young Faith Prince. But I had never thought about that comparison. We've interviewed Annalee. She is also a friend of the pod. But I was like really taken with her in My Father the Hero. Because again, she's sort of like playing like an annoying character that isn't seem like necessarily like that character. You know, she's written broadly and she grounds it in such realness. And I just love Faith Prince. She's a legend. How grateful we are to have gotten to hear these stories on the record. We hope you enjoy it all.
Folks, if you want to follow the show, you can find us online at You Might Know Her From on TikTok and Instagram, and on all socials at Damian Bellino. That's Damian with an A, and Rodeman. That's my last name with my first name, Rodemanne.
Also, let's shout out Gang. Gang is the band from Philadelphia, 3/4 women that write and perform all music, underscoring each and every episode of You Might Know Her From. Shout out to Gang. Listen to Gang and stream them wherever you listen to your music. You want to talk about show notes? Talk about show notes.
Oh, Damian, each and every episode of You Might Know Her From, I spend time archiving everything we discuss, and I put it at the bottom of the episode description, because for me, it's nice to be able to re-reference the fact that we talked about the Pope maybe today, and maybe also 6 years ago on Samantha Mathis.
Also, it's no longer Women's History Month. It's no longer Lesbian Visibility Day. Maybe it's Best Friend Day. But I just want to shout out my best friend and co-host and co-producer, Ann Rodeman, who edits each and every episode of You Might Know Her From. Because you know what? I'm not good at tech. You know what? Ann's not good at tech. You know who learns how to do the tech? Ann. I love Ann. Ann, thank you for editing every episode. I'm so grateful to you, and we all are. So thank you to Ann Libra Rodeman.
Thank you, Damian. So, Damian, at the time of recording, you know, you're in New York, but when people are listening to this live, you will be overseas in the homeland in Italy. What is the thing that you're most excited about? Because like we were hoping that you're going to be there when the white smoke emerged, but like surprise, they really called the new pope really early, and he's from Chicago, which is insane. But I feel like there's still going to be a lot of pomp and circumstance while you're there.
I keep thinking about how you said that you said you were excited to watch Conclave because you heard it was campy. It just makes me laugh every time I think about it.
I was thinking I was going to revisit it, even though I just watched it like 2 months ago. I'm going to watch it again just to like get the whole
take half an
flavor.
edible and watch it and see if that makes it different. And Hannah might like it because it's like a thriller, you know? Maybe not though, because it's like religious.
Yeah, it was. We'll see. But I'm really excited for your trip to Italy. I'm actually going to Italy like a week after you are, which is insane. But sadly, we won't be linked up there. But what are you most excited about? What are you most nervous about?
I think I'll start with the thing I'm most concerned about maybe is like, it's not like something about Italy. It's just about like, I'm going with family. And I think that I'm nervous about not like my being with my family, but I'm worried about like not having plans and like having to be more of like a leader than I typically am if on like a friend trip where I'm side of like a good time girl. Like I feel like I'm a vibe maker, and I feel like my family knows that too, but I feel like I will be responsible in some ways to be like, it's okay that we don't have a plan. Let's just walk and be aimless and like go into this place or go into this place. But I think it'll be fine. The thing I'm most looking forward to, and I don't mean this to be overly earnest, but it's like, you know, it's always, in my opinion, more fun to be with family when you're not on anyone's home turf. Maybe that's not true, but like when my family comes to New York, I have more fun with them, or it's different because like they're visiting me in New York. So I guess I'm on my home turf, but I get to show them like my like New York. And when I'm like visiting them in Pennsylvania, it's like where we grew up. So it's like, and then they have to do like errands or pick the kids up, or like my mom wants us to like move something from the basement upstairs. I think like being in Italy will be fun, but you know, on a more like surface level, I'm really excited to see Cats. Italian production of Cats. I'm having a lot of trouble purchasing the tickets because it like needs me to text all that, like everything that I'm trying to buy in Italy. It's like call, and it's like, well, that's hard. Or like it'll be like text, oh, you're in the US, no problem, we'll send you this SMS code or whatever it is, and then like it doesn't come, and I'm like, this is really difficult. I'm just trying to buy these tickets to secure my seats to Cats. Anyway, I'm going to see an Italian production of Cats. Also, I will be venturing out at some point to go to like gay bars or like a drag show or something, maybe solo in Rome, and I'm like excited about like what that will look like, and also just like what it is to tell my mom like I'm like, oh, I met a guy on Grindr that I'm gonna go meet at a gay bar because like I need to experience this while I'm here, because who knows when I'll be back in Rome. I think hopefully I'll be back at some point to Italy, but like when, I don't know.
I was wondering if you were going to take your brothers or your mom along to the gay bar. So
I told them that they're welcome to come, you know?
Okay.
I don't want my brothers to get more attention than me, that will bother me. But also, you know, I feel like they're good sports. So I also think that I appreciate that they are like progressive enough and like not weird that they would go to a gay bar, you know?
I can't wait for the full report. I feel like we're going to have to put it on the record. But it's just very weird kismet that I am going to Sicily to visit my family there a week after, because I'm going, because the impetus was because my nephew is in a production of Grease.
Did we talk about this last week? I can't remember. I can't
remember if we did, but I just like, I cannot wait. It's in Italian. And I was telling my therapist this week, I was like, so yeah, you know, I'm going to Sicily in like a couple of weeks and I'm really excited about it. And, you know, like I'm going to see Greece and blah, blah, blah. And she stopped me after like 5 minutes, but it was like, I thought you were going to Italy and now you're talking about Greece. And I was like, no, Greece.
Greece is the word.
The musical,
Honey.
babe. My nephew was playing Danny Zuko and I am hyped as fuck to see this Italian production of Grease Jr., where I found out sounds like it's the movie production. So it's like they're doing You're the One That I Want. They're not doing Hopelessly Devoted. They probably didn't have a Sandy that could do it. They're not doing Hopelessly Devoted. They're doing You're the One That I Want and Sandy, which makes me think like,
yeah, they have a Danny Zuko who could do Sandy, babe.
Oh, I'm so hyped. I said to my sister, like, is it in English or Italian? She said, oh, it's in Italian, but like they don't translate Grease Lightning, so they just say Grease Lightning. But then I was like, what about Rama Lama Lama? She said, no, they just keep Rama Lama Lama, but there's other nonsense words like Yana Mana, like
Yamana.
I can't wait. I just feel like we're gonna have so much to report on. You seeing Italian Cats and me seeing Italian Grease is so perfect.
I'm sorry. I know we're going on so long on the button, but if you're here with us still, I feel like you want to be here. I want to know, is it a surprise that you're coming still? It is, right? So you're going to like show up to the production?
So my sister and her husband know. My nephews who don't listen to the podcast don't know. So I think it's going to be a surprise, but we'll see if they keep it. But my family really loves surprises, so this is sort of in the vein of that. It was like we have a history of surprising each other.
I just having a vision of your nephew, because it's like we talked about what the production might be like, and it's not going to be like a flashy high school production that we are like imagining in the States. So I'm imagining him in sort of like a white t-shirt and like dungarees, like blue pants, maybe not even jeans. And maybe not even a leather jacket. I would like you, if you're not going to be there, which I feel like if you were there, you would definitely do this, but I would like you to impart on your sister the importance of her doing his hair appropriately to be Danny.
Great.
So like she needs to like comb in the back of his hair into like a DA, which my dad taught me, like a duck ass. So it looks like that point. It's it's like you comb the sides together to make it look like a duck ass. And then also like giving him a pompadour and maybe like a little curl. So can you please, at time of recording this, can you message her on WhatsApp and say Damien said this?
He used to have long hair that would have been perfect. But
I thought he still did.
So I have to see. Maybe he can grow his hair out for these next like 3 weeks before I get there, so that like he can really. But yeah, otherwise we're buying a wig. You know what I mean? Like,
let me know if you need me to send one. You know.
Maybe I'll bring a wig just in case. I'm so hyped.
And I'm mouthing that's kind of funny.
Really... What'd you say?
I was like mouthing that's funny, but like it is funny. You should do it. Bring a wig in case he needs it.
In case he needs it. Oh, God. Grease.